This is the story of a musician, artist, and occultist who named themselves Genesis P-Orridge.
We've never been into punk. It's too traditional.
Genesis P-Orridge, whose mixed media shows with his band Psychic TV are intended to shock and disturb. This is the other side of pop.
18th October 1976, London. The band Throbbing Gristle is about to play their first musical gig. The members of the band, together with founder Genesis, were mostly known for their performance art project, Transmissions. With exhibitions influenced by the Dada and Surrealist movements, their work was often extreme, featuring shocking performances and imagery that aimed to merge art and everyday life through provocation. They were alternately absurdist and political. One of their exhibitions even sparked a debate in Parliament, where a conservative member famously called them the wreckers of civilization. But despite the growing popularity, lead member Genesis felt that the Project still belonged to the elite realm of the art scene. It was art for art's sake, in the most confrontational and immersive way possible.
And also it was too easy to sit in a nice protected art gallery with people with cocktail glasses. Yes, very interesting and meaningful. When in fact you knew that they probably had less understanding of your emotions than the taxi driver who took you there.
So, with the creation of Throbbing Gristle, they aimed to reach a wider audience. They believed that music was more immediately visceral than the fine arts, and that it had the potential to reach a much wider audience. But their approach to music was rooted in the idea that anyone is capable of making it. So they looked around their art studio, gathered anything that could make noise, and a few months later, on October 18th, this was the result.
We'd like to thank you all for coming tonight.
The music was anarchic and improvised, using instruments like broken violins, prepared pianos, guitars, and bongos, while deliberately avoiding drums. It was Genesis who coined the term for this genre of music, industrial. Over their lifetime, Genesis was credited on more than 200 releases, cementing their status as a visionary within the avant-garde art scene. They amassed a devoted cult following and became widely recognized as the father of industrial music. Their groundbreaking ideas continue to influence music, from the underground to the mainstream. But here's the thing, Genesis was so much more than just a musician. And in today's climate, little to no attention is given to Genesis's most revolutionary art project, love. And this is also the story of Jacqueline Breyer, known to friends as Lady Jaye, a woman of heart, a nurse, performance artist, musician, and singer. A tall, Twiggy-esque blonde who had also dabbled in dominatrix work. While living in New York one evening in 1993 at Terence Sellers' dungeon, she saw a man in his 40s lying on a bed, his eyes red from lack of sleep. That was Genesis.
And then I heard a noise and somehow woke up and looked at the doorway and this girl walked by.
And I was just entranced. Incredibly tall, slim, to me very beautiful woman. And I just thought, wow, who's she, you know?
The moment Genesis describes is often framed as love at first sight.
I saw this lady on the television in a commercial and fell in love instantly. And it was
a cosmic connection between two souls. But was it truly love in that instant? Or was it, more likely, a memory shaped in hindsight? This event happened by chance, yet for Genesis, it felt predestined. Every decision and moment in life seemed to lead to that point. Retroactively, it felt necessary, as if fate had arranged it. But notice how Genesis speaks of Lady Jaye in that moment, as if she were a spiritual guide into a higher sphere of religious ecstasy, describing her in abstract terms like beautiful, sexy, elegant. This dynamic is clearly reflected in the traditional historical concept of courtly love, where the woman is placed on a pedestal and viewed almost as a sacred or divine figure. Yet she is not only elevated, she is also distant, cold, and untouchable. She must remain that way so the man can project his own fantasies onto her. She becomes an ideal not because of who she truly is, but because he needs her to be that. In a narcissistic way, the man looks at her and sees only his own dream version of what love or perfection should be. He is not truly in love with the woman herself, but with the ideal he has constructed, allowing him to pretend that his sweetheart is the inaccessible lover. Take, for example, Spike Jonze's film, Her. The protagonist, Theodore, struggles to navigate the complexities of real human emotions and relationships, so he falls in love with an AI voice. He projects everything onto her precisely because she has no physical presence or emotional demands of her own. Theodore tells himself that if Samantha had a body, she'd be the perfect partner. But deep down, he's terrified of that idea, because the moment she becomes real, the fantasy falls apart. Now, you might think it's simply a case of a man projecting his fantasy onto a woman. But remember the example from the previous video where I talked about how a blurred face in a documentary creates a void. That blur isn't just hiding something, it opens up a space. And it's that empty space the viewer rushes to fill. The same thing is happening here. There has to be an empty, mysterious surface, something unknown and open to meaning, before a man can start projecting his fantasies onto it. When Genesis met Lady Jane, that emptiness became a space to imagine something special. Lady Jaye was seen as perfect, unlike anyone else. This also reveals that Genesis had always felt incomplete, carrying a vague sense of something lost, even if it wasn't clear what. The fantasy built around this idealized woman was simply a way to fill that void. The projection doesn't create the lack comes first. The fantasy is a response, a way of managing or covering over that absence. But in that moment, what Genesis didn't realize was that Lady Jaye also lived with a strange feeling of incompleteness, a sense that something was missing deep inside. In fact, this feeling of lack isn't unique to either of them. It's something we all carry. Everyone feels incomplete in some way, and that sense of absence stays with us throughout life. We try to escape this lack by pursuing money, status, material goods, or relationships. Yet desire can never truly disappear. It simply relocates, attaching itself to new objects or goals. Does that mean we're doomed to be miserable? Not quite. This sense of lack isn't a flaw. It's what makes desire possible in the first place. Communication, like love, is structured by lack. When we speak, we never fully say what we mean. Something is always missing, misfired, or distorted by language. Similarly, in love, we never truly relate to the other person as they are. We relate through our fantasy, through our projection of what we want them to be. Love, at first, is also a kind of misrecognition. Yet that very distortion is where the truth of our unconscious slips through. Just as the other's response in conversation reveals something unintended but deeply true about ourselves, the moments in love when our fantasy breaks, when we're confronted with the other's flaws, limits, or differences.
Please don't talk with food hanging out of your mouth.
Oh, sorry, I'm a pig, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Also reveal something about our own unconscious. If we are prepared to recognize this and continue to love the person, not in spite of, but through that rupture, then we move beyond narcissistic love. As time went by, Genesis and Lady Jaye got to know each other deeply, and the illusions they once held began to fade. They saw each other's weaknesses, the little habits that annoyed or frustrated them, the moments of awkwardness or doubt. And yet, even as those cracks appeared, they didn't turn away. Instead, they chose to stay, to trust and to accept each other with all their flaws. Genesis and Lady Jaye's love story didn't begin in the dungeon, where they idealized each other's fantasy of perfect union. This love story, like all real love stories, doesn't have a clear beginning, so it probably went something like this. One day, Genesis woke up, ate breakfast, brushed teeth, and did all the normal business, until sooner or later, it suddenly became clear. This uncontrollable feeling for Lady Jaye was love. But love is not the transfer of something concrete. It's just a feeling, an image we hold of the person we love. That's why, for love to truly arise, it has to be grounded in symbolic gestures. With love, you're entering into a legal, social, and cultural contract, with all its rules, expectations, and baggage. That's why it is sensible for anyone in a relationship to have some kind of observance for symbolic protocols, like buying flowers, remembering anniversaries, exchanging vows, or taking part in formal ceremonies, like a wedding. These are symbolic acts that bind people together and give love meaning and legitimacy because they represent something beyond the personal feelings of the people involved. Love breaks down the boundaries of the self, asking each person to let go of familiar patterns and parts of their previous identity. Suddenly, personal preferences, like the movies you used to watch, the music you listened to, the way you cleaned your house, or how you spent your time, are no longer solely your own. Love, in its truest form, demands this sacrifice, much like the ceremonial wedding, where people literally change their name and past identity. A symbolic gesture that tells the world, out of all the people in the world, you, precisely you, are the one, and I choose to build a life with you. It's this commitment, this willingness to share a world and a future with someone else. Yet in this very sacrifice, there lies a kind of freedom to evolve beyond the limitations of a solitary self and to grow through the presence of the other. These symbolic commitments make love visible and formalized within the larger social context. Without them, love will only stay in the imaginary world of the lover and the obsession with the image of the other person. But the moment this fantasy cracks, the subject can't tolerate the real person behind it.
When did this happen? What happened to make you behave like this?
That's when obsession flips into hatred. Love and hate are two sides of the same coin, both rooted in the same imaginary fascination with the image of the other. So in a way, hate is an extension of love. Hate resists symbolization, but love, even if it begins as imaginary idealization, can only survive if it passes into the symbolic. Today, modern society tends to avoid symbolic transformation. People often prefer open relationships, one-night stands, and keeping love casual and fun. They hold on to their own apartments, their names, their identities, and view rituals and ceremonies as outdated or unnecessary.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just don't understand why people would want to get married, especially nowadays, I mean.
But Genesis and Lady Jaye saw something deeply conformist in this so-called freedom. The rejection of ceremony had become its own kind of tradition, a refusal to risk anything truly transformative.
People don't listen. I've been saying change, 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 change for all my life, and yet people don't want me to change.
So they thought, if people today are afraid to sacrifice even a part of their identity, a name, a label, as a way of showing love for one another, why not skip a step and go further? Why not dismantle the very borders of the physical self, the face, the body, the gender? So, on Valentine's Day in 2003, as a 10th anniversary present to each other, the duo underwent body modification to resemble one another. They received matching breast implants from a renowned cosmetic surgeon, followed by eye and nose surgeries. Over the years, they invested around $200,000 in cheek and chin implants, lip enhancements, liposuction, a tattooed beauty mark, and hormone therapy. They dressed in identical outfits. Each mimicked the other's mannerisms.
So we started dressing the same, doing our hair the same, and then getting little things done. She got her nose done like mine, and I got little tattoos of her beauty marks and so on.
Love, make me clean. Love, someday I swear we're gonna go to a place where we can do everything we want to. And we can pet the crocodiles.
They aim to break down the limitations of biological sex and express their unconditional love for one another. They called it Pandrogeny, a love that rewrote the body and unraveled habits shaped by culture, family, and unconscious desire. In 2007, after returning from a tour with Psychic TV, Lady Jaye was about to get a set of gold teeth to match Genesis's, a final gesture in their shared transformation. But sadly, at the age of 38 on the 9th of October at home in Brooklyn, Lady Jaye collapsed and died in the arms of her heartbroken other half. Lady Jaye died from a previously undiagnosed heart condition, which is thought to have been connected with her long-term battle with stomach cancer.
American flute.
God, you're cute. Can I give you a kiss?
The shared transformation was heartbreakingly interrupted. Yet it is precisely in this interruption that the truth of Genesis's love revealed itself. Lady Jaye might be gone, but the love remained, not as nostalgia, not as grief, but as a radical fidelity to the event they had created together. Even after her death, Genesis didn't stop. They continued the Pandrogeny Project alone, undergoing more surgeries, and eventually referring to themselves as we. The love no longer needed a partner. It had become a truth lived through the body. Genesis remained faithful not to the person, but to what had emerged between them. Until their own death in New York City on March 14th, 2020.
I get lonely, can I be lonely here with you?
You know how you think, what would people say? What would they say at the funeral? What would they remember us for? And what would they say in the obituaries, you know? Would they still call me the tampon man? Yeah, the most evil man in Britain, sex monster and everything else. And I said, oh God, I don't want to be remembered as the tampon man. So Jaye said, well, I don't care about any of that art shit. I just want to be remembered as one of the great love affairs of all time. That's it.
People today like to say that Genesis played a key role in the modern liberation of sexuality. However, Genesis knew that it's not sexuality that has to be liberated. It's love that's gradually disappearing. Thanks for watching. Don't keep this video to yourself. Send it to someone you love, and let it be the symbolic gesture that leads to a flower, a kiss, or a wedding.
We're nominated for a VMA because we made the first music video to ever use this thing called data moshing.
Data moshing?